So how is Bangalore treating you?
Namaskar.
Today we are going to talk about soft skills, right? This is also commonly called as people skills. If you're an engineer, you have a technical skill. If you're a doctor, you have a technical skill. So there are various kinds of technical skills. But what is that enough to move forward in this competitive world? So there are 4 skills apart from the technical skills. The first one is communication skill. This is the most important skill. The second is organizational skills. The third is intelligence. There is a big difference between knowledge and intelligence. So knowledge is acquired. Intelligence is within, which means all of us have the same intelligence, but your knowledge level may be very different from mine. So except the technical skills, all other forms are called soft skills or people skills today. Stanford Research and Harvard University as well as Carnegie Foundation found out that 85% of job success comes from excellent soft and people skills. Only 15% comes from technical skill. Do you see that difference? Hundreds and thousands of people I come across when I go talk across India in schools and colleges. They have fantastic technical skills. They cannot even say most of the time what they are good at. There are 4 skills under communication. First one is verbal skills, how you speak, and written skill, how do you write, and active listening. The last one is storytelling. Effective speaking involves the words you choose, how you say, and how you reinforce them. So what's your thought on verbal communication?
So in the technical world, for example, you are giving demos, right? You've built a feature and you're going to give a demo on it. If you can't give an effective demo, then you can't tell people why you built it, how you built it, and how it's going to be used. So it's very important to be able to have that skill.
You have seen so many people in your career for the last 25 years. You have worked with so many Indians. So what are the 3 things which we lack in speaking?
I think sometimes people get wrapped up in their own words because they lack that confidence or that knowledge to kind of bring things down, right? So be simple in your language and don't over communicate something. You don't have to use a lot of flowery words. In America, we are not flowery. So it's good to be to the point and also be able to explain yourself easily.
So in India, we have so many languages. We have 970 spoken languages in India, and each one dialect is different. So the problem for us is I can speak in my language effectively. When I speak in English, I try to convert that from my native language to English. I used to do that.
Yeah.
So what's your thought on that?
I think practice, right? Like, you know that you're going to be speaking in front of people. Practice. Do it in front of the mirror and see how it comes across. Do it in front of your roommates, in front of your wife, whoever you're with, and be able to kind of get that feedback. Feedback is super important.
Fantastic. So next one is written communication, that the reader must understand everything you are saying without any confusion. The biggest challenge today is that when you write, 99% of them, the other person who's reading it, will never understand what you have written, because 99% of the time they misunderstand. So what's your thought on how to write effectively? Nowadays there is a lot of AI, so I think over a period of 10 years we'll forget how to write.
Listen, if you ask me to use a paper or a pencil and write something, it's going to take me forever. I don't physically write anymore. But email communication or text communication, you have Teams, you have Slack, you're using all of these different technologies. You have to be able to kind of do the same thing that you're doing with speaking. Be able to say concisely what you need. And it usually starts with a question. What do I need from you? How do I need to get this information? And what method do I need it?
One of the biggest challenges I come across with young people today is that they are very hesitant to ask questions. In America, everybody asks questions.
I think it's just ingrained with us. Like from a young age, we're taught that you don't know everything, so it's better to ask questions than assume. So don't assume that somebody knows what you're talking about. Ask them.
So it's very important as Monica said, think before you ask question and make the question, as she said, very concise. So the next one, which is very interesting topic for me, is that active listening. Active listening is the ability to fully concentrate on what is being said rather than just passively hearing the message of the speaker. So how do you do active listening? Especially today, people are working from home. We are not meeting physically.
For me, I will listen to what the person's saying and then repeat it back and say, this is what I heard from you. And then that gives them an opportunity to say, yes, you heard that correctly, or no, that's not what I was saying. Here was what I was trying to say. So I think if you repeat it back to someone, it kind of increases that shows that you're listening.
Today, storytelling is one of the most important skills, because storytelling is not about communication. Storytelling is not about telling a story. Storytelling is about how do you captivate the audience in what you're going to say. So storytelling here, I'm talking about sharing and interpreting experiences with simplicity, which is what you said.
Yeah.
That involves human emotion. These days, especially with all the things digital, I see most of the students today across India or anywhere in the world, they're all hooked onto their phone and they don't even shake hands. They don't even say hello to you. So how do you manage? You have 2 kids, so how does things work in America in terms of storytelling?
I think, the younger generation is a little bit more into listening to stories online, right? You have TikTok, you listen to a quick story, or you might have Insta where you read a story or you listen to a story as well. I think creating your own stories and sharing those can help as well. Don't just consume, but actually become part of the community and start to do that.
Lovely. There was a survey done many years ago, around 5-6 years ago. They spoke to some of the most successful people in the world. They asked them to say one thing that changed their life. Almost everyone, including Warren Buffett, said that they read 5 books in a month minimum. And they spend every day 2 to 3 hours reading books. So when you read books, it changes everything. And you learn what is storytelling when you read books.
Quick anecdote, but I think I interview a lot of people, right? I interview engineers, PMs, Scrum Masters, whoever's on my team. And one of the questions that I always ask is, tell me about a time that you had to solve a problem and how you did that. And most of the time I get a very linear, very book answer to that. But when I interview somebody and they give me the story about, I had this problem and the manager told me that this was how I could solve it, but I went away and did it on my own. I love to hear those stories. It's a human factor.
Beautiful. The next one is organization skill. So organization skill, it starts with deep work. Deep work is a term coined by a man called Cal Newport. So what is deep work? Deep work is about doing cognitively challenging tasks without distraction. My question to you is, how hard it is today with all that we have, distractions everywhere, how do you focus?
I take a lot of notes. So I use notes, I use checklists, but sometimes it's just being able to focus, right? Taking that moment to know I'm on this call, I'm not going to do anything else. So often people are multitasking on calls or multitasking in meetings. And it's a skill to be able to put away your computer for a second, concentrate on what's going on in the room, and have the discussion that you need to.
Lovely. So you are a single mom. How do you focus work and home? How do you manage that?
I compartmentalize. So my work is my work, my home is my home. And if my kids need something, they will come ask me for it, and I will generally stop what I'm doing to help them. But I think being able to kind of separate those two is really good. I think the work from home situation has made that worse.
Lovely.
Because now your home is your work. And me personally, I like to take that out of it.
In India, we don't compartmentalize life like that. We are one of the pioneers in spirituality. When I say that, why we are pioneers in spirituality? Because spirituality requires chaos. If there is no chaos, there cannot be spirituality. So if Indians with all that understanding, if they can focus, if they can compartmentalize, like what Monica said right now, you are going to see success in a much, much larger way. My next question to you is adaptability. The quality of being able to adjust oneself. You are talking about how do you adjust your time at home and spend time with your kids and take them for vacation.
Yeah.
All of them you have to manage it. So how do you adapt, and why adaptability is the reason for success?
When I look for people that I'm hiring, I look at certain things, and one of them is how easily can they adapt to a new situation. If I can give you a new situation where, you know what, you were on this team, now you're going to go over to this team. How quickly can that person learn to communicate with those people, have the same success that they had with the other team with this one? Because you're not always going to do the same job. You have to learn, you have to grow, and you have to adapt to every different situation.
So today, if you see it, the people who come to our office at Pepper Square, let's say they are at the age of 24, their understanding of life is far better than what I had when I was at that age.
They have these mini computers in their pockets that tell them everything, right?
So with so much of knowledge, how do they adapt?
To me, I mean, adapting all comes down to compartmentalizing, doing things when you're supposed to be doing them. And I know that sounds really boring and everybody would rather be doing all the things all the time. But if you keep going in that way, you're eventually going to burn yourself out. Burnout is huge amongst people who are just consuming all the time. Yeah.
My next question to you is, in the last one in organization, is problem solving. So how do you do problem solving with your work? Because you have got so many people talking to you at the same time and you need to categorize them. How do you categorize them? How do you make sure that you define priority?
In our team, many problems can arise on any given day. I make sure that I have people that I can trust that will help drive solutions to those problems. How they do that is usually by traceback methods, right? Like go into whatever the problem is, research it, find out what happened. You have to have a method to problem solving. It's not something that you can just make up on the fly, right? So it's always good to think about, hey, if I'm gonna solve a problem, most of the time I do it this way. And then if you repeat that pattern over and over, you're gonna find out that 90% of the problems that you're solving have the same pattern.
How does your daughter, who's 19 years old, how does she do problem solving at school?
It usually involves something emotional. But then once you get over the emotional hurdle of something, then you can actually calm down and think through, okay, here's the problem that I'm solving. But usually when you're young, it's hard, right? We're old, we've figured it out.
But is it in America, are you taught problem solving from schools?
No.
You're not?
No. That's something that you learn on your own.
So my question is, before going to the next one, which is intelligence, in America, what's the importance given for soft skills from the school to colleges and everywhere?
I think we focus a lot on communications. Right? Lots of schools will have public speaking classes. They'll do things like what we call Toastmasters, which is where you get together and you speak in front of each other and get feedback. So there's a lot on communication skills in that way. So I think that's a big focus. I think also mental health is a big focus for these kids. At my daughter's school, they have a whole mental health section where if you're having a hard day, you can just go into a quiet room and hang out and your teachers won't ask you any questions. Things like that, I think they're trying to teach kids how to calm their minds more than we used to.
So my next topic here is intelligence. The first one is creativity. Do you spot people who are creative, who are more creative than others easily?
Yes, and I think that comes down to, for me, I think it's connection. I think you can connect with people who are creative easier. Otherwise, the opposite of creative is following a pattern, following rules.
Is that logical?
Right, that is logical to follow the rules. But when you don't follow the rules, great things happen too.
Right.
Right.
So it's important to follow the rules because we all work in a system and everything has to work together. But creativity is the core of a human being, right? So every single human being are very creative. So the next one I have is learning, right? So we just touched upon it. The acquisition of knowledge and skills through reading and experiences. We spoke about it. So how do you learn?
So finding time for learning is actually very, very hard.
Absolutely.
As an adult with so many things to do, I think that, it's one of those things that you have to actively carve out time for. Like the other day I was like, man, should I do an MBA? I would learn a lot more about financials and things like that, and maybe that would help me in my career in certain ways.
Fantastic thought. So I wanted to touch upon this is critical thinking. So my question to you is, what is that you are all taught at work? How you are taught to do critical thinking at work?
Yeah, right. I think that goes back to problem solving, solutioning as well. It's taking that moment, setting aside the emotion, and going into how do I fix this? How do I solution this? How do I solve this problem? Easier said than done, but I think that's also where compartmentalizing comes in as well. It's all connected.
Absolutely. So every day it's very important for you to define certain percentage of time for learning, because we all have only 24 hours. How come some people excel so well but some people don't? It's all about how they manage their time. So time management is a core skill all of you must focus on. So the next one is awareness, right? This is one of my, this is very connected to my heart. The more awareness it is better. Your life will become beautiful because you know how things work. You are not in control most of the time. There are only very little thing we can control.
Yeah.
But we also say in ancient India that while you are working on increasing your awareness, how do you do that? You have to be alert.
For me, self-awareness means that I know myself and how I'm going to react to something. And then I can have that thought of, that hasn't worked in the past, and I should change the way that I'm thinking about that. For example, when you get feedback from someone, your first instinct is to push it away and say, but that's not me, right? Like, I don't do that.
It's being defensive.
Yeah, if my first instinct is to be defensive, when somebody gives me feedback, I have to pause and think about that and say, I'm getting defensive. How do I stop being defensive in this moment?
Lovely.
And think about it from a rational standpoint.
Lovely.
That to me is self-awareness, right?
So my next question is connected to that, which is emotional intelligence. So
that's a big one, and encompasses a lot.
That's a big one.
Self-awareness is part of emotional intelligence,
Absolutely.
right?
One of the core problem with emotions is reaction. When you are reactive, most of the time we are reacting. We are not responsive. So when you are responding, it's very different. So how do you stop being reactive? It's very simple. Whenever somebody says something to you, don't say anything. Just pause for 10 seconds. Don't say anything at all. And then take a moment and think through, then you can respond. So in your case, how do you, when somebody comes and shouts at you, let's say in your office, or maybe at home or anywhere, how do you not react? Rather you respond. What is your methodology?
Yeah, so I think it's just that pause, like you were saying, right? Pause, think about things. It might be okay to tell that person, hey, you don't need to shout at me right now. You can defend yourself and also not react emotionally, right?
In a corporate environment, I can understand. But let's say
Yeah.
somebody comes in, gets upset with you at home, how do you manage that?
I ask them why they're upset with me, right? If you go into questions, then you kind of start working through things.
If somebody asks me, when I'm upset, if somebody asks me why am I upset, I cannot even answer that, because most of the time anger has no meaning, right? So we don't, it's just our emotional outburst. So when you ask why, what is the answer most of the time you come across?
Yeah,
What's the
sometimes
common-
people can't say why. And
Absolutely.
then I say, well, then you're not mad at me. You need to go figure out what you're mad at if you can't articulate it.
Absolutely right.
You know?
So the last one here is inspiration, right? So how do you get inspired every day?
I look for people who are doing good things in their lives. And, you know, like, I have a few people that inspire me. One of them, her name is Nancy Lyons. And she is a CEO of a company, but she's also the most down-to-earth, simple, plain-spoken person ever. She's not about herself. When she goes out and talks, she's just very simple, and I like that.
When you say simple, what do you mean? Define simple.
Meaning she doesn't use a lot of big words. She's very down to earth. She'll say what she means,
Lovely.
right? There are a lot of people who won't say what they mean. They will push things around and say things in certain ways so that you can interpret it any which way you want. But someone who's clear and concise and is like, hey, no, here's me, here's what I'm doing. I really like that.
So the last one for today is leadership. So today leadership has become so important factor, which I wanted to share, is that take people along with you. So the most difficult thing is when students are coming up, when they're starting their life, career, they want to prove themselves, right? So they are busy proving themselves. How they don't even look at who's doing what. So how can they take everybody along with them and move forward? What's your thought on that?
So leadership to me is, I mean, even at an individual contributor level, right? That means you're not managing a team, but you're contributing to a team. Things don't happen in a vacuum, right? If you're building something, chances are you're not building it alone. You're building it with people. You have to have communications with those people. You have to be able to make this happen all together. No one wins alone.
Lovely.
Everybody has a coach, right? Even like runners, yes, they're running alone, but they have people behind them that are pushing them, coaching them, supporting them, everything.
So my next question is delegation. How do you delegate and then forget it, trusting that person they will deliver it? How do you do it? It's so difficult.
It is hard. First, it's good hiring. You hire people who can do their job well and who show up and they prove it time and time again to you. And the more that they prove it to you, the more you can delegate to them.
Fantastic.
I don't think it comes easily, right? If you don't have people to delegate to, then you end up doing it yourself, which is very, very difficult.
So which means constantly, if we have to prove ourselves in our work or in your personal life, you are competing with your own self and increases anxiety. So how do we manage these two?
Yeah, I mean, for instance, I brought on a new operations manager, right? He was going to walk in the door. I knew he didn't know everything. There was things that I needed to take on for a while until he learned them.
Do you handhold him
No.
initially?
I'm not good at hand-holding. I don't think it serves anybody a good purpose to handhold them. I think the more
Because
you,
how many people do you handhold? You can only do it one or twice.
yeah,
Once or twice.
I mean, it's like a baby, right?
Yeah.
If you handhold a baby, if you hold them all the time, they're never going to learn how to walk.
Beautiful, fantastic.
Right? So if you constantly are hand holding someone, you're going to be holding their hand forever. If you have that person on your team that you're constantly telling them what to do, you need to stop doing that. They're never going to grow if you keep telling them what to do all the time.
But when we don't handhold, how do you translate your experience and your knowledge to your team members?
Oh, I think, lots of people will make mistakes when you're not hand holding them, and you have to support them through those mistakes. You can't reprimand them. You can't say, oh, you should have known this. You have to support them.
Lovely. The next question is connecting to that is responsibility. So most people misunderstand responsibility. Most of the time we only look at the dictionary terms and then we get stuck to that, but you need to go beyond dictionary terms to find the truth. So responsibility means it's your ability to respond to a situation. How do you are working at US time, India time, many times I've seen you sending us email at 2 o'clock in the night for you, and then there are times you send us mail at 5:30 in the morning sometimes, your time.
Yep.
So how do you manage? How do you get sleep? And
well, that's all a choice, right? Like I've made that choice that I will do that. Sometimes I am happy with that choice, and sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? This is craziness. But it is a conscious choice that I've made.
Lovely.
To be able to communicate at those hours because it's more effective.
Fantastic.
Right?
I wanted to throw open questions for you guys. So if you guys have any questions, please ask for Monica and me.
So what do you more believe in, like a leader leading from the front or the back?
I think leading from the back builds better people and better teams, right? You're allowing your team to make mistakes. You're allowing them to learn. You're allowing them to grow. If you're constantly up front, then you're the only one that people see. So yeah, leading from the back.
So what advice you will give to a person who wants to read books? Because reading books takes time, that interest development takes a bit of time. So what advice will you give in that scenario?
So pick up a book which is the smallest book in terms of size, because our mind works like this. When it sees a bigger book, oh shit, this is so big, I can't finish it. Buy a smaller book, smallest possible. There are books which are available for 10, 20 pages. You finish it faster. Make a note of each one of them. Write it down when you started reading. When you started reading the book first. So go open that and see it. And when you see that, normally on an average, if you're not a voracious reader, you should be able to finish a book in 10 days time.
When we read so many books, it's hard to keep track of the information or whatever it is there. So how do you actually retain that information?
Do you just go do this exercise at home? Every time when you swipe through social media, the next day try remembering what did you read, what did you focus. You cannot remember anything because that's the way the software is designed. The software is designed to hook you. Whereas in the book, when you read, your mind goes everywhere. You need to be alert and bring that and start writing it down. Make mark in each of the pages and write down your thoughts. And it's very important to go back and read what you have written. Now, how do you remember? It's memory. And there is so much of distraction around you. Stay away from distraction as much as possible. You will find your own way.